Talent accumulation. These are the two words which have defined Chelsea since Todd Boehly and Clearlake Capital took over ownership of the club. Chelsea have bought player after player in the hopes of landing a super team, with an incredible level of young depth. Just simply going through the moves they've done over the past few transfer windows can be a tiring exercise. While there's still time for this project to eventually become good, it's hard to find the positives to their approach right now. A few moves have worked out, although that is to be expected given the sheer volume of business Chelsea have conducted. Cole Palmer was one of the best players in the league last season. Malo Gusto has been quite good in taking over the right back starting spot for the often injured Reece James. Some would argue Nicolas Jackson also counts as a good move so far. His debut season last year had him in the top 20 for total goals and assists in the Premier League. On a per 90 basis, he was just inside the top 30. His underlying numbers were even better, whether you adjust it for minutes played or the raw total. Doing that in your age 22 season is nothing to sneeze at, and should signal a bright future. On the other hand, the biggest critique thrown at Jackson last season was his wastefulness as a shooter. Only Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Brendan Johnson underperformed their expected goal tally at a greater magnitude within the Premier League. It doesn't help that Chelsea fans have had the fortune of watching top-tier strikers over the past 20 years, which invites more criticism on Jackson's underperformance. This might be why Chelsea were trying to sign Victor Osimhen over the summer, a peak-age striker who is regarded as one of the best at his position. Fortifying the striker position was reasonable on its own, but were Chelsea correct in being aggressive to upgrade over Jackson? Was it an overreaction to a single season of finishing variance, especially considering Jackson overperformed his expected goal tally with Villarreal? This video will try to examine just how good Nicolas Jackson is right now, and if he's the type of striker who could lead the line for a title contender in the near future. Off-ball movement is the biggest swing skill for the striker position. Throughout the history of the sport, the best strikers are able to make runs in behind during different scenarios, whether it be against a high line or trying to find an inch of breathing room against a low block. For the biggest clubs in the world, they often have to deal with the latter scenario. Having a striker who can create space without the ball in tight areas is a necessity. Against higher defensive lines, Jackson has shown to be adept at attacking it. While I wouldn't say he's masterful at playing on the blind side of his marker, he's pretty good at it. In his favor as well is that he's got impressive acceleration and speed, which gives him more of a room for error with his movement. He's also pretty good at quickly flipping his hips to prepare himself before the run. He can either sprint into the channel, or float to the flanks and still remain something of a threat due to his fluidity as a ball carrier. If a center back is marking Jackson tightly, he's got the wherewithal to spin away and use his burst to get an initial advantage. A lot has been made of Jackson's offside rate last season, as he was only behind Darwin Núñez in total times caught offside. Part of being a top-level striker is having the willingness to gamble that the next run they attempt could lead to a dangerous opportunity. There's a potential progressive toll where opposing center backs constantly having to react could tire them out over the course of 90 minutes. It's almost like a game within a game. This isn't to fully defend how often Jackson is offside, but it's not the end of the world either. Jackson's movement inside the penalty area is a little bit more of a work in progress, but there are some bright moments. Once a teammate is in a crossing area, especially on the right wing, it's common to see him try to weave his way towards the near post ahead of his marker. On the left side, he's more likely to not vary his movement and rely more on timing when darting forward. When he is occupying center backs, it does help create opportunities for teammates making late runs into the box. This example from Jackson's Premier League debut versus Liverpool last season represents the best and worst of his game at the moment. You can see him operate on the blind side of Ibrahim Konate and execute an impressive double move to find himself open in the box. Once Jackson gets contact on the ball for the shot, he leans back a bit too much, which leads to him hitting it over and missing a quality opportunity. Another major part of being a striker is the ability to play with your back to goal. In these situations, certain types of forwards can credibly hold their own against physical center backs, whether it be receiving the feet or in the air. Being able to shield and draw fouls can help in alleviating pressure. A select few can quickly evade from their marker and get into space. In terms of aerial duels, Jackson isn't someone who will consistently win his one-on-one battle. He's fine at uncontested headers and is a decent leaper, but he can get bumped off his spot and lose his positioning. As well, he's not the greatest at judging the flight of the ball. Given Chelsea's style of play, this isn't a major issue, but chips away at his value a bit. It's his link-up play when receiving ground passes which is much more intriguing. He's capable of quick hitting flicks and back heels, which can help grease the wheels of Chelsea's attack. This happened multiple times versus Wolves, which helped quicken the ball progression. It doesn't always come off well, in part because he can lose a physical battle. When it does, Jackson can make some magic happen. Speaking of magic, Jackson's ability to turn might be the best in Europe among his position. Part of the reason why is he's more comfortable absorbing the initial contact in these situations. The first touch is functional, and on occasion, he'll let the ball roll past him and use that momentum to get by. His decision making after the turn is largely solid, and at times, he can make high-level plays when facing forward to teammates making runs into the space he vacated. It's interesting to see the moments where Jackson drops deep to act as a playmaker. It doesn't happen often, as he was in the 44th percentile for live ball passes among strikers according to FBref. There is a willingness to make incisive passes. However, it can feel like he's a beat off in looking to make those forward deliveries. He'll take one too many touches and the window of opportunity is closed. Any discussion about Nicolas Jackson usually contains at least a brief mention about his shooting. Let's start with the positive. Despite only being in the 54th percentile among Premier League forwards in shots per 90 last season, he was in the 91st percentile in non-penalty expected goals and 95th in non-penalty expected goals per shot. You can see in the shot chart why he ranked so highly in those two metrics despite the middling volume, with tons of opportunities coming from the central zone of the box. In the intro, I noted that Jackson was among the most inefficient finishers in the Premier League last season. It was the exact opposite of what happened 2 seasons ago with Villarreal, where he outpaced his non-penalty expected goal tally by 4.2, according to FBref. That was the second best mark in La Liga, only behind Gabri Veiga. From watching some of Jackson's shots, one of the big things to emerge is that he didn't seem to have great balance during his shot motion. The footwork wasn't clean when preparing to shoot. You'd see him stumble when getting contact, which decreases the power and accuracy he can get. He can also be a bit hesitant in taking first-time shots. The indecision and lack of balance showed itself a couple times after rounding the goalkeeper, where the shot would lack thrust and gave defenders a better chance at making those Hollywood clearances. While Jackson wouldn't be considered a two-footed shooter, he's at least not afraid of attempting shots with his weaker left foot. According to Understat, 30 of his 144 shots with Villarreal and Chelsea have been with the left foot. Although the willingness is there, you can see similar issues in terms of balance. During the times where he does get decent contact on the shot, they're largely right at the goalkeeper. A thing to know with Jackson is that during partial breakaways, he can sometimes have an issue with the chasing defender obstructing his path in the lead up to the shot. This makes him prone to getting nudged, and the opportunity becomes tougher or is completely gone. While you wouldn't think of the comparison given their different sports, it's a bit similar to what happens in the NBA. Creative guards look to make sure their defender is on their back so they can't recover in the sequence. It's called putting the defender in jail. This doesn't happen as much in football, but could be effective for getting shots off. Nicolas Jackson is one of the most fascinating players in football right now, because it seems that there's a split opinion on him. Some would say that he's nowhere near good enough to be the lead striker for a title contender, pointing to his wastefulness around goal. Others would argue that he's a rapidly improving number 9, and while he may have his issues as a shooter, he's got the all-around skill set needed to still provide strong impact. A lot of the discourse around Jackson does go back to finishing talent. Whether you're a casual fan, or an analyst at a football club, there is agreement that finishing talent exists in football. Numerous players over the past 25 to 30 years have been celebrated for their ability to score tons of goals. How much we can quantify finishing talent is a different matter, and has been something the analytics community has tried to figure out since match event data became public in the late 2000s. The results are mixed. Over at American Soccer Analysis, Tonya Haber did an article on shooting overperformance in Major League Soccer. When looking at year-to-year repeatability, there was basically no correlation even after adjustment. That was in line with previous work done by Devin Pluller in the early 2010s. At KU Leuven, one study done on biases in expected goal models found that you're more likely to consistently overperform expected goals for multiple years, if you can combine high shot volume and skilled finishing. As well, expected goal models don't represent the average player, but rather the average finisher because of confounding effects in training data, which plays a notable role in overperformance. Further work from American Soccer Analysis looked at conversion rate trends from shot type through a project called Where Goals Come From 2021. This visual is looking at the Premier League from 2015 to 2021. The more shots taken, the steadier the trend line becomes. Here's an example of some famous forwards in European football and both their goal conversion rate and expected goals per shot up until 2021. Shooting talent begins to stabilize at around 200 shots. I'll link to these studies and others I found in the description. In general, the big thing that the stats community has hammered home over the years is the immense value of being able to generate tons of high-end chances. That can be more resilient against tougher competition than relying on finishing talent. This may give off the impression that finishing talent is mostly tied to variance. While there is some luck to it, just because we're not at the stage yet where we can truly identify finishing talent through data, doesn't mean it's almost at random. There are certainly guys at either end of the spectrum in terms of shooting talent. Strikers spend so much time training their technique and footwork in the box to get shots off and be more comfortable at shot placement. The question is, how much can footwork and shooting technique improve over time? That's for much smarter people than myself to answer. My semi-educated guess is since footwork and shooting tendencies are established over time, it could be really tough to change that dramatically. As a professional, you've trained yourself to shoot in a certain way. This is especially true for strikers, since they've taken so many shots during their career. It's like basketball players trying to fix their jump shot. In the NBA, there have been mixed results on being able to improve the shooting form. It is possible that Jackson will often finish behind his expected goal total. In that case, he'd have to win out on volume to get to high single-season goal tallies. One example of this in recent times was Raheem Sterling. He's never been known as a natural finisher, but was among the best goal scorers in the Premier League during his peak years, because his movement helped him generate tons of good chances. Despite the shooting concerns, all-in-one metrics think highly of Jackson's performance last season. In Hugh Klein's adjusted plus-minus model, he was in the 88th percentile among players in the Big 5 leagues. Donald Cayton's MBAPPE metric was also high on his ability to help drive winning. Among forwards his age or younger, he was among the very best in Europe. Part of what's driving these ratings is that Chelsea dominated the shot count in the minutes he played, and were much worse when he sat. While Jackson deserves some credit for this, these metrics are perhaps going a bit too far with the praise. But it's fair to reason that these metrics are hinting at Jackson's ability to raise the ceiling of a team. The biggest clubs in Europe are looking for strikers who can lick up play, utilize forward movement, and operate in deeper areas during certain situations. It also helps that he's an impressive ball carrier, although it's more slanted towards him getting his own shot. This led to him having a higher than average usage and shot creation rate, although not among the highest in either. In an ideal situation, Jackson might be more in the mold of a ceiling raiser who best functions as a tertiary on-ball option. Most would agree that Nicolas Jackson is a good striker right now. Is he among the very best at his position? I'm skeptical of that, but there are avenues for him to get there in the future. Perhaps the movement improves and he generates more shots in the box, even with a drop in the average shot quality. That could help him make up for potential worries with his finishing. Maybe he becomes more automatic in the moments where he drops off to act as a playmaker. Becoming better at either of those things would jump him up a level or two. The early season form has been promising, although I'm curious to see how Chelsea fare against more set defenses as the season continues. As of now, I think Nicolas Jackson is underrated, and with continued growth, could become one of the great strikers in European football. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Here are some other videos I've done for the channel so far. I hope you all are doing well, and I'll catch you next time.